Good afternoon. I call the work session for the Board of Education meeting for July 16th to order. Is there a motion to approve the work session agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Let's get started.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At this time, I'll introduce Mr. Brath, who will engage in introductions.
And Mr. Locklear.
Starting with Mr. Locklear.
Good afternoon. Exciting day ahead of us today. And I'm fortunate, I'm very glad that we're starting off today's discussion about the guiding principles for the new Area 1 elementary school. We had a great session last time with you all going through what a guiding principle is and doing a session of putting things on the wall, seeing what sticks, and getting some responses. It was a great experience. I know the team here, we enjoyed it thoroughly, and I hope you did too. With that information, we had met with the advisory council, or committee, excuse me, advisory committee, and did the same exercise with them. And there was a lot of similarity between everything that the board had put up and that the committee had responded with as well. So there were two great sessions we had, and today with us, we have returning back Mike Miller with Numrex and Laura Evans with Numrex. And what they're going to do is take you through a presentation of what happened, what was heard, and give some feedback on that, as well as take a look at some proposed language to consider for a guiding principle. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Laura and Mike.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's good to be back. We'll go, this depends with the introduction since you all already know us, but can we get the PowerPoint? There we go. This afternoon we're going to be talking about a brief review of why we're here and what the guiding principles are supposed to represent. Laura will take over and provide a lot of detail about what we have learned over the last several meetings with the board and with the advisory committee, and the synthesis that we have come up with to help guide the board on assignment planning. And then we'll talk a little bit about the timeline at the end. And as always, any questions at any time, please interrupt us, and we'll do our best to help move things on. Again, the big picture for all of these discussions is Moore County Schools is opening a new K-5 elementary in Area 1 in 1920, followed by 3 more K-5 schools. The guiding principles are designed to help you with difficult decisions that are coming your way over the next several years about opening new schools. So hopefully this will lay some type of framework to allow those conversations, the challenging conversations and important decisions that you are going to see in the very near future. Laura?
Okay. It's good to be back in Moore County. Each time I come, I'm learning more about Moore County schools, but the interesting thing is I'm learning more about your geography because my Google Maps works, but I do not. So when I make a wrong turn, it reroutes me another way. So I'm all over the county, and it's interesting. So I really appreciate that. It's good to be back today. You all had a great discussion on June the 11th. Gave us a lot of information that we've put on this presentation today and synthesized it. We took it to the advisory committee, and I think a bunch of them are here today. They gave us good feedback. We actually met with them earlier today, too. We're starting to really rely on them. That's a good group of folks. And they gave us feedback on this presentation we're about to give to you. So we really appreciate that. So it's all about your board policy on student assignment, as we've talked about before, and the definition at the very end of the policy about other relevant factors. And we're taking those 3 words and translating them to guiding principles for developing an attendance area for the new school that will open in the 1920 school year. Why are guiding principles important? Well, you've got to have something that backs up your decisions, something solid and concrete. So when you're talking to parents, you can say, these are the principles that guided us, okay? They will provide guidance for creating the attendance area. I'm getting a little off, I feel like. I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead for just a second.
Sure. Picking up there, the guiding principles are designed to provide you some guidance in the decisions you're making, specifically in the analysis and data that these scenarios that you will see for Area 1 elementary school, how to interpret it, and how to communicate those ideas to your communities and your parents. So over the course of the next several months, we're going to see a lot of data, a lot of tables, a few maps, and the guiding principles will help you make decisions that come up from those tables and maps, hopefully. And finally, the guiding principles are designed to promote a transparency in this process so that you will be able to effectively answer questions from the community about why decisions were made and what's the data behind those decisions and what's the thought process behind them.
Okay. Now, you know when you go to a meeting and they always have the guidelines at the top? Be friendly to each other. Don't talk over each other. And everybody agrees to those kinds of things. Well, with guiding principles, we've got some guidelines too. All right, and these are really important. First off, there is no intended priority for the guiding principles. They're all important. They're all important, but we're not going to rank them, okay? Some guiding principles overlap. Some guiding principles will conflict. Some assignment solutions may not be realized to the full extent. And the guiding principles are dependent on the schools impacted by the assignment plan. Okay? I think it's important to always remember this as you go through the drafts and as you build this attendance area. All right? All right, what did we hear? We put this together in 2 slides and we built it into 4 categories. Balance, we heard a lot about balance. Planning, efficiency, and community. All right, we're just reiterating what we had on those sheets. Under balance, to what we think we heard, to the extent possible, the assignment proposal should consider appropriately balanced utilization for all schools impacted by the assignment plan. Balanced utilization. Consider balanced programs among the schools impacted. And consider demographic balance. And we specifically talked about academic achievement and socioeconomic status under balance. Then we heard about planning. To the extent possible, the assignment proposal should provide stability against multiple assignments. Because you're opening one school in the 1920 school year and then 3 more following that, we don't want to stumble upon ourselves. That's not good for children, and parents don't like it. Okay? Provide stability. Consider impacts of programmatic changes. Consider neighborhood and community cohesiveness. That's super important to parents. Okay? Consider future impacts of residential development and demographic trends. Very important. You get that data from NC State. Very important, and that will be incorporated into this assignment plan. Utilize up-to-date membership data and development data, and consider impact to feeder patterns. Super important to parents. Okay, feeder patterns. We'd like to have a large cohort of students moving together from elementary to middle and from middle to high. Okay. Under the other 2 big categories, efficiency to the extent possible, eliminate the use of modular and mobile units. You're building a new school, you're adding new seats, it's time to let them go. This is where I kind of speak out of both sides of my mouth. If we're super crowded, I'll say, so glad we have mobile units to help with that crowding. But now that we don't need the mobile units, so glad we can get rid of them, you know. So we do want to eliminate as much as possible. We want to consider student travel distance. That's important to parents. That's important to all of us. And consider walking distance. If you can walk to school, we want you to walk to school. We support healthy lifestyles. So that's all under efficiency. And then under community, to the extent possible, the proposal should communicate to stakeholders throughout the assignment process. This is a big one to me. I think it's super important that your families and communities are involved in the process. Incorporate feedback from your stakeholders. And I've already learned that there'll be feedback on the website. We've got a number of community meetings in the timeline you'll see, so different ways to get feedback. And the advisory committee, already on the job, although they are not being paid. But we do feed them, though. Communicate the difference between district priorities and family-specific priorities. When we have these community meetings, it's inevitable that there's going to be parents that will come. I know always just at least one who's really upset about the changes that are being proposed. And it's mainly because there's a whole lot of other stuff going on in their life than what we know about. But they're there at the meeting to try to get a solution to whatever issues they have. But we have district priorities, we have family priorities, and we have a process that helps families with their issues, and that's called your transfer process. So we've got to work to keep that separated. We need to be fair, we heard this, fair, firm, and consistent. I don't know who put those words on paper, but that was an excellent point. Fair, firm, and consistent in the application of the guiding principles. Okay? That'll be important through the whole process. And then be sensitive to the needs of the district and to what makes Moore County schools unique. That's what we heard, and that's a lot, okay? So we took the next step to say, we take these 4 categories, and this is what we propose as your guiding principles. Okay, it's just our proposal, and this is your time to say, I like that, or I don't like that, or can we change that, or can we do this? So we took those 4 big categories with this background information, and we boiled it down to this proposal. Still have the 4 categories: balance, planning, efficiency, and community. Under balance, to the extent possible, the assignment proposal should provide balance in building utilization, program opportunities, and student demographic factors. Under planning, to the extent possible, the assignment proposal should utilize up-to-date school and planning data to provide a stable assignment plan that is forward-looking and responsible to community and student needs. Under efficiency, to the extent possible, the assignment proposal should seek to optimize operational efficiency. And under community, to the extent possible, the assignment proposal process should promote transparency and be sensitive to the needs of our families, our community, and our students. So those would be your guiding principles, but you still have that backup information that we showed you in the first 2 slides. We're going to give you an opportunity to talk about it. I don't know if this is the point to do that.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so we'll stop right there and see your thoughts on those.
Sounds
fine to me.
Okay, let's go.
Madam Chair, before Mr. Dennison jumped the gun, I was going to offer, you have 2 board members that are liaisons to the advisory committee. Perhaps it would be opportunistic for Mr. Dennison to hear what they have to say, and then he can reconsider his position. But I would offer that as a suggestion.
I concur. Libby or Stacy, you are both on the, I'm sorry,
Betty.
I'm looking at Betty. Betty and Stacy, both of you were on the committee. Can you tell us your thoughts on the process and on these principles?
Again, they've taken and made
and been concise about all the different pieces that we put together. And what I really appreciated was the listening that they did to our advisory committee members, hearing what some of the family members had to say, how they were feeling about certain aspects. And so, and they've now made some changes to integrate some of their feelings and thoughts into this, which gives us a working document.
And ownership for the
Yes.
community. I think that was huge. That they really wanted ownership. They wanted people to know about the family. We're not just looking out for the district, we're looking out for our neighborhoods, our families, our communities, so.
With the realization that not everybody's going to be happy all the time, but this will give us a start.
That's helpful. Libby, Ed, did you have any comments?
Oh, I stand by what I said.
I want to see if anything changed.
I'm glad to see the emphasis on the planning part of it and the fact that knowing that we have the other 3 schools to follow very shortly, that we're looking ahead. I've been listening to a daughter whose child will attend a different school district, not Moore County, unfortunately, and they're about to open another school. Her child will be in kindergarten, and there's another one to come the next year. She says, what if she has to change schools immediately? What will we do? I said, well, she'll survive. But to know that we are, and yeah, that's right, it's much harder on the parents than on the kids. But to know that we're looking forward, very forward thinking, knowing that we don't want to be swapping children around on a yearly basis, as they have to do in Wake County, unfortunately. And I'd really like to see the emphasis on that.
I think the only thing I would add is I like that it's succinct, that you were able to pull these into 4 basic principles with a lot of support information behind it. I thought it was very helpful that right before this you talked about the overarching principles. I'm not sure what to call those, but that there's no hierarchy within these, and that they could be in conflict. And we may not be able to get each of them at the right level that we'd want to. And I think I can already see that this is going to be a challenging process, but it is good to be able to look back towards these principles and then understand what we want to rest our thoughts and how we want to go back to something that will provide us guidance, I guess, for lack of a better term, as guiding principles. But knowing that there's none, that there's no hierarchy, and that they're going to ebb and flow depending on what discussions we're having, and that's helpful.
To add to that, I thought y'all were going to come in with a list of here's priority number 1, here's priority number 2, here's number 3. And obviously, that's not the way it works.
It would be nice if it was easy, but it's not going to be easy.
Well, we also, again, one of the pieces that we heard today in the last meeting that we had was about the fluidity of these principles, to be able to ebb and flow as we need to move with them, but have a foundation to build on.
And I think that foundation is critical. If we didn't have this, we wouldn't be able to go anywhere.
Right.
So I think
I
that's
guess
helpful.
to Betty or Stacy, were there other concerns from the family, the advisory councils that we're not addressing here that you think we need to be considering? I'm guessing y'all took very careful notes because you were meeting with the advisory groups. But did you get any
There's one
feel
right
from
there.
them that there might be something extra that we need to consider?
They have been very considerate of everything that we've had to say, and they've addressed everything that I think every parent and teacher and principal we brought up to them. They really listened to us.
They
were
did.
very open.
That's
Thank
good
you.
to hear.
That's helpful. Any other reflections before we move on?
Madam Chair, the administration would then ask that when you come back for the meeting portion of your gathering today, that under board action, we're recommending that this item be put under board action. So as you reflect over these next couple of hours until that point that we get to, that you can all come back to this topic, discuss it one more time before you want to take final action on it. We would like to get your validation of these guiding principles so that as we continue to work with the advisory committee in anticipation of some community forums, after the community has something to react to, These guiding principles then will be applied by Laura and Mike as they work with the staff to formulate a draft, and then that would be something the community would react to.
So just to be clear, it's these 4 principles that you're asking us to vote on in
That's
our
all you're
regular
doing,
session?
is validating. You're approving these guiding principles so that our consultants and our staff can use those as they formulate a proposal that the community can then react to.
For maps and.
Yes, ma'am. Yep. That'd be it.
All right,
There's still more.
okay.
Okay, so the timeline, I think we've shown this to you before, but we've added a few things. So today's the 16th. We met with the committee. We're meeting with you now at the work session. You're going to affirm these guiding principles tonight at your business meeting. On August 6th, we're going to give you an update where we are with everything. In August, we're also going to meet with our fine folks on the advisory committee, at least once, maybe twice. They have such good input, we might just meet with them every day. I don't know. Then on September 4th, we'll come back to you at your work session to provide draft 1. And it's important to emphasize draft 1, okay? And then we'll share it with you guys. We'll take it, I always say, take it on the road to the public, get feedback in a public meeting. There'll be an opportunity to respond on the district website. We'll take that feedback. We'll meet again with our advisory committee to synthesize the feedback, see what we can and cannot incorporate, how it affects draft 1, and develop a draft 2. And we'll bring that to you, and we'll do it all over again. We'll take it out to the public, get feedback from the website and from the public meeting. We'll work again with our advisory committee. I love the advisory committee. And then we bring you draft 3. And this is the part, I will always say it is my happiest moment, because at that point it's in your hands, okay? And then you make any changes that you want to make. You're the elected officials, you're the boss, okay? And then our goal is then, at your November 5th business meeting, that you will approve the attendance area for that new elementary school that will open in the 1920 school year. And I like to say that the end date, we like to keep that pretty firm. Because if you start wiggling with the end date, then the end will never be here, okay? If you want to add meetings in between, I'm fine with that. Of course, if you change the end date, I'm fine with that too, but I would recommend try to stick to the end date if you could, okay?
Well, and I think this end date is important for families. I think it's really important that we make a decision so that families are aware as early as possible in the process. Because I think that's only fair if we're going to be opening up in the following fall.
Definitely.
And to the extent where there may be exceptions for individual families, then they'll need to know that in advance of the beginning of the transfer process, which begins in January.
Good point.
With the public engagement meetings, I know we're specifically looking at the new Area 1 school, but is there any discussion allowed on the future of the other 3 schools to come at that point, or are we jumping the gun?
I would say that's jumping the gun a little bit. The Area 1 scenarios that you will be looking at will have background information about subsequent openings. And the reason being, as we said before, we want to make sure that we aren't looking at multiple reassignments in this process, but the focus of the public engagement meetings will be Area 1 elementary.
We are engaging Southern Pines as well, though. I don't
Yes.
know if they brought that up or not,
Yes.
because they are part of the puzzle.
I just wanted you to know, I couldn't read that. It's not on my laptop, so I turned around, so it's much easier for me to read that. I wasn't ignoring you.
Anything else, John? Or
That's the last one.
That
Laura?
was the presentation. We had a great 1-hour meeting with the advisory committee, and we went deeper into these items and each and every one with them. Very good exchange. Again, Mike and Laura, professionals in doing this and helping steer and guide this process very well to where we are today. This will come with staff's recommendation. to go ahead and take action on to adopt them as our guiding principles at the business meeting.
This presentation is not linked to the item later on the agenda?
Not this time, because the presentation was modified between the advisory meeting and this meeting.
That's fine, I'm not complaining, I'm just stating that between now and after the dinner break, perhaps if each board member had a paper copy of just the guiding principles, and I don't think it's practical to get it linked in between, but if they could have a paper copy of that, I think we'd appreciate it. Okay, and then Mary Kate, do you have a copy of this? Okay, we'll make sure Mary Kate gets make sure she gets a copy of that this evening. Board members, any final questions regarding this pending action item for later this evening?
I just want to say how much I appreciate that the advisory committee members were willing to share. They did not sit and be compliant. They offered their concerns, their what they saw for the community, what they saw for their children and the school district. And that made a difference because there was a give and take. And that was very important to have happen.
Great. Anything else? Thank you very much for your work today and for this information.
Mr. Brath will stay put because he is next on the agenda for items B and C.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Brath, I'll let you just charge on.
Will do. The first item on there is the contract for custodial supplies. Our current agreement with the current provider, Image Supply, had expired June 31st or 30th, and we put this out for proposals from vendors that were interested on June 10th. I had requests from about 8 different vendors. 3 of them ended up submitting proposals for these services. They came in on June 28th, and the turnkey costs are included in your summary there from Image Supply of $209,000, Safel of $289,000, and Seven Oaks for $232,500. The apparent low bidder, Image Supply, they've, as I mentioned, our current holder for contracted services and has not performed the required services identified in their agreement for training, inspection, and inventory. Due to their performance, they are not considered the lowest responsible bidder. Regarding the next lowest bidder, being Seven Oaks, we have contacted references identified by Seven Oaks of their services, and the responses that I received were overwhelming of the support the districts had received from them, as well as the product quality and the inventory management as well. So as a result of this, Seven Oaks is the lowest responsible and responsive bidder. They are a North Carolina company located in Oakboro, strong support across the state. And during your regular business meeting, I'm making a recommendation for approval of their contract, which is attached to provide these services for the next 2 years with 2 one-year options to extend them should the board decide to. I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions?
Will they be providing the exact same services that we had expected to come through with Image?
Yes, they will be.
So training is a part of that, and inventory?
Training, inspection, inventory, delivery, everything.
Now, are we going to be playing catch-up since we weren't able to meet all the necessary criteria with Image as we begin with Seven Oaks?
As far as catch-up, you're talking about
Like
getting
with
all
more
schools
training
to a
or,
level.
and the inventory and whatnot?
Yes, we have been in communication with them since the bid opening, and they are ready for tonight's action to commence with their services.
All right. Thank you. Next item.
Mr. Brath, contract for installation of the football field at Elise Middle School.
Looking to it there, okay. So on June 22nd, we requested informal bids for a football field to be modified and created at Elise Middle School. On July 10th, we received 2 bids to perform the work from Black Rock Nursery and from Hefner Landscaping The prices are included in there. The apparent low bidder, Black Rock Nursery, of $168,087.83 is the lowest responsive and responsible bid. They've successfully performed similar work on large projects, and the original anticipation for the work budget was $207,000, and all this is from the lottery funds, giving us right now potential savings of $38,900. So we believe that Black Rock will perform the work as considered in the contract documents and the project manuals, and are recommending that the board consider a motion to approve them in the amount indicated. I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
What's our timeline on this?
I am waiting for them. They are actually shut down this week. When they get back next week, to get a schedule from them. So I don't have a specific answer for a date at this point.
This is the creation of a completely new facility.
Football field out there, correct.
So where are we playing football now?
They are playing off-site.
Off-site, that's what I thought.
Well, and this is for all the middle schools, right? The
Right, the
Colts,
northern
the
end
Colts
of the-
team, right. And each middle school has a different sport, so Elise has been picked for the football
Correct.
program,
Will this
correct?
one be used for soccer as well? Yeah,
That-
there's a head nodding in the
I'll
back,
have
so.
to defer to them.
Okay. Yes, it will be used as for the soccer field as well. Thank you.
But the project consists of the full development of the field, the striping for both activities, the goalposts, everything, the irrigation, and sprigging and seeding.
Tennis courts?
Tennis courts are being removed.
That's where-
Demolition of them. They're in the way.
Which school houses any tennis activity for middle schools?
Westmore.
Westmore? Okay. So each sport, the purpose of that, we don't need to go through all the sports, but the purpose of that is that between High Falls, Westmore, and Elise, and Northmore High School, we're making best use of the available facilities by moving the athletes to the venue as opposed to creating additional venues on that.
Any further
Any
questions or
other
comments?
questions or feedback, board members?
Glad to see two local firms applying. So we have some good choices.
And I like to see the $38,000 savings from our
Mhm, I was
budgeted
just gonna
amount,
say
so.
It does my heart well to, we had a speaker come before the board. It may have been John Huzzy, Lisa, a couple years ago, or somebody associated with football at one of the three schools, who talked about the conditions of the field for our middle school football players on the north end of the
Off-site
county,
location,
yeah. And
transfer.
so the Northmore facility can only house so much. And so this now creates a really nice venue, a second venue for football on the north, and soccer as well on the north end that we haven't had before. And it results from our consolidation of the athletes to one group. And that creates that kind of efficiency then that we can provide and they actually expand on our facility opportunities. So my compliments, John, to what you've been able to pull together. But I think more than anything else, once again, to the principals and the community. At times we had some differences of opinion on this. But I think we're now seeing the true benefit of being able to consolidate the three schools and see then how that then benefits all students at all three schools at the same time. So it's good to see that happening. And there could be more to come before we're done.
We've got a good transportation system, too.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm very appreciative to all the schools and their patients and the parents while we allowed our lottery fund to climb
Yes.
to a point where we could afford to do this type of work.
Well, just like we did with the Union Pines track. Rather than rush it and just put another Band-Aid on it, we waited until we had the money, and then we really got in there and came up with a fix that's going to be much longer lasting and certainly is now a spectacular venue for track and field. And, you know, we can kind of look at, seeing that improve over the, expand those opportunities over the next couple of years. Okay, you ready to move on, Madam Chair?
Sure am,
All right,
yes.
thank you. At this time, we'll excuse Mr. Brath and invite whoever Mr. Locklear wants to bring with him here. It says,
Just Ed.
Yeah, we've got Dr. Powers listed, and that's the reason why I hesitated. So we've got
He's at the beach, we won't hold that
He's
against
on
him.
vacation.
we've got a very capable replacement in
Thank you.
Lucinda Dedman.
Well, we're excited to be sharing with you some information this afternoon about an opportunity in collaboration with our county as well as with the Sandhill Center. So we're really excited about that and appreciative of that collaboration and partnership. So I'm just going to turn it over to Lucinda, let her share a little bit about what we know is an incredible need for us here in Moore County Schools and what we have ahead of us as a partnership. So,
Okay. Madam Chair, Dr. Grimacy, members of the board, I'm going to talk to you about a memorandum of agreement with the county and for funding some behavioral health practitioners. I have the clicker there. Okay. So the vision, Dr. Grimacy, as you know, has had a vision for a critical student incident team in Moore County since he arrived 4 years ago. He was inspired by a team in a previous district who responded to emergencies and helped the student until long-term support could be arranged. He's been asking for years to fill this team. Finally, the beginnings of this team looks like it's going to become a reality. The need. About 20% of students have a mental disorder. Only 20% of those students receive treatment. Half of all long-term mental health needs begins in childhood. So, and we know that the earlier you get treatment, the more effective it is and the better the outcome for the people. And suicide is on the increase throughout the whole nation. This is data from the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, which is conducted every 2 years by the Centers for Disease Control. This year's data indicates that Moore County Schools is very slightly higher in self-reported suicide attempts than the national average. It's not significant, but it is a little bit higher. A more complete analysis of the YRBS will be forthcoming in a later meeting. But for now, these data show that 9% of Moore County Schools high school students report that they had attempted suicide at least once in the 12 months prior to the survey. To kind of confirm this, our mental health workers completed 129 suicide severity rating scales this year. 41% of all Moore County Schools females, high school students, reported that they were feeling clinically depressed by the definition of the 2 weeks. And 44% of Hispanic females said that they were feeling clinically depressed. So that's pretty significant numbers there.
Those are all percentages, Lucinda?
Yes. Yes. The good news is that we have the opportunity to start our central team. The county commissioners assigned Sandhill Center funds to the schools this year. So now we can begin our centrally located team. We are calling it the Behavioral Health Intervention Team. And Sandhill Center accepted our proposal and will fund for two practitioners, salary plus benefits plus training, for our 2-member team. So these professionals will be able to not only provide case management and therapy, but also training. Our BIT team members will be looking for school personnel who are psychologists, social workers, or counselors who have their school licenses. Also, we would like to hopefully have them have their private licenses or be willing to pursue their private licenses in the long run. So that we are looking for school people with clinical backgrounds, clinical skills.
What does the private license bring them? What different experience does that bring them?
So a couple things. One, the people that have the private licenses usually have more mental health clinical training. So our school personnel are trained for school. That role within our normal psychology, social worker and counselors, their role is more specific to schools. So instead of doing long-term cognitive behavior therapy, for example, they would do short-term school adjustment counseling. So it's a little bit different. Some school professionals also have that clinical training, but not all do. It depends on what the training was like. People that also have a private license definitely have that clinical training and background. So it's just having that dual license is one step up. But we don't want to require all of that because we want to be sure to get the best person for the job. Did that answer your question? Okay. So our vision is that the BIT team will respond to emergencies. We'll accept referrals from school teams as an intensive level of support. They can't respond to every single emergency to every single school because there's only 2 people. But they would be available to consult with school teams to do better at the supplemental supports before requiring this Tier 3 intensive support service. Also, they would, as I said before, will be able to provide short-term evidence-based practices. So they'll be able to do therapy on the short term. We're trying to keep their caseloads low so that they can respond to all of our students at the same time as providing that case management to find more long-term solutions within the community, within the providers, within the community. And finally, they'll be able to provide training to our teachers to expand the mental health capacity of our teachers to manage behavioral health needs.
Cindy, if I could just underscore a point that
Yes.
you just made there. Our intent here isn't to usurp the role of the care providers, the mental health care providers in the community. Ours is to recognize the difficulty, stabilize the situation, and then connect our children that have these needs to those longer-term services in the community.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so that is, yes, thank you for bringing that up. That's really important because we are working on establishing partnerships with the local community, and we are definitely not in competition. There's plenty of business out for everyone, and that's the idea, is to stabilize them until we can get them hooked up with someone who can do the long term.
I guess ours would be characterized as first responders.
Yes, yes, that's a good, and I forgot to do my slide there. First responders, that's a good one, yeah. The future, we're very hopeful that this is just the very beginning. We would like to have our original, Dr. Bob's original dream was to have 3 members of this team, and so this is 2 of them, and we're hoping to pursue additional funding to see if we can't expand our capacity and have more members of the team as we go forward. Any questions?
Cindy, if you would, please, before we open it up to questions, could you just provide a little bit of background on who it was that brought you and I to this opportunity?
Absolutely, I would be very
Let's give
happy.
credit where credit is due.
Yes, I'd be very happy to do that. So Dr. Grimacy received a phone call from Mr. Vest, the county manager, and asked him to come to a meeting with Miss Victoria Witt, who is the executive officer at Sand Hill Center. We weren't sure what was going to happen, so we went to the meeting, and it turns out that Ms. Witt had some funds available for reinvesting into the community, and the county commissioners requested that that funding go to the schools this year. They have in the past provided funding for mental health services in other agencies, and this year they decided that the schools needed it. So we were very excited to be able to submit a proposal to Sand Hill Center, which was accepted, and pending your approval and the county commissioner's approval, we will hopefully move forward.
Let me just correct that, just one little
yes.
piece of that. This was actually, this was an accumulated Medicaid reimbursement stream that the Sand Hill Center has had, and it has built up over time. And it was not only feedback from the Moore County commissioners, but from other local governments that are serviced in the Sand Hill Center region, that they wanted more of that Medicaid reimbursement flow coming back to the local schools, not just Moore County schools. And so Victoria had made this information available to the county managers, and Mr. Vest then organized the meeting that we had with her. The thing that Cinda left out was that in that meeting, Cinda was able to hear from Ms. Witt what was available and then custom design our need. She knew what our need was well enough to articulate that in that context. And originally, the amount, we've got the amounts in here, but the amount that's been made available to us, $193,000. And I think Ms. Witt was thinking more in the neighborhood of about $150,000. And Cinda did an outstanding job of articulating the need and giving a preliminary plan just on the fly of what we would do with that money, that I think that built that confidence in the part of Mr. Vest and Ms. Witt. And when they came back to us, we were actually pleasantly surprised that they were very generous in their support of what we might do with that. So I want to compliment Wayne and Victoria for taking that initiative and inviting us to the table. Board members, questions, feedback?
What is the long-term sustainability of this funding? Will we be able to get it in future years?
Yes, that's an excellent question. Do you want to take that one, Dr.?
Yeah, I think I
Dempsey?
will. It is no more or less stable than the Medicaid reimbursements that we built into our budget this year as temporary bridge funding for nurses, some instructional support positions. I think we saved a counseling position and multiple nurse positions this year with our Medicaid reimbursement money. So to the extent that Medicaid reimbursements are secure, this funding is secure.
How difficult is it going to be to find professionals that fit these type of positions?
That is exactly, thank you for that question. That's a very good question. That is the reason that I left it open to be either a psychologist, a counselor, or a social worker, because the psychologists are most highly trained. However, they're harder to find, as you know. And there are a number of our current psychologists, social workers, and counselors already have their private licenses. So there may be interest within the community, but also there would be interest, I think, throughout the state. So I think there would be probably plenty of counselors and LCSWs, social workers, who would be interested.
And do we have students within the schools already receiving services from Sand Hill Center in the schools?
So the way that works is that Sand Hill Center doesn't provide the direct services, but we do have several private providers who do see the kids in the schools. So we have ABA therapists that come into the schools who are not through Sand Hill Center. They're usually paid through TRICARE. We have a number of students who are seen by Alexander Youth Network, Trinity, and Pinnacle Health Services. They provide their services mostly outside of the schools, but their providers do come into the schools to see the students, to do some case management, talk to the teachers, and that kind of thing. So there is some of that happening. I'm hoping to grow that in the future because we need all the help we can get.
In your dream world, which two qualifications would you pick for these jobs? I mean, would you like 2 psychologists or would you like 2 counselors? What would be your dream world?
Oh, that's a great question. I think it would be nice to have not 2 of the same profession. I think it would be nice to have more diversity in terms of background. But mostly it'll be the person, I think, depending on which, what person shows up who looks like she or he is the right person for the job. So it's, that I could go
That said, though, it wouldn't
anyway.
hurt to have a psychologist and a social worker.
Exactly, exactly.
Said if I'm not mistaken, the Children's Center only takes children up to 5 years of age.
Sand Hills Children's Center, that's correct, yes, they're preschool.
But I was referring to, it's the Sand Hills Mental
Sand
Health
Hills
Center.
Center for Mental Health,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Mhm. So
Which is
Sand Hills Center for
different.
Mental Health
It's
is-
important to discriminate, to distinguish between the two.
Yeah, yeah.
One
so
in West End.
Sand Hills, yeah, the one in West End, yes. And they're the LME, local management entity for Medicaid funding.
Is it fair to characterize then that these professionals will be really helping with the Tier 3
Yes.
kids, and then that would allow our professionals in the schools to continue to focus on Tier 1 and Tier 2? Is that sort
Absolutely.
of what you're
Absolutely.
trying to do is push off the more severe cases so that they can have more intensive services to get them to the long-term services to alleviate the pressures on the in-school staff?
Absolutely. And I'd like to say, too, thank you for talking about the tiers, because this team will also be available to consult with schools to beef up their Tier 2, their supplemental services, so that they will be less reliant on the Tier 3.
I'm looking forward to the presentation on youth behavior risk survey, because
Let's go ahead and,
that's
Catherine,
coming, I
Catherine, if you
imagine.
could go backwards to that particular slide before we leave this topic. Can we go backwards, or Tim or Cinda?
Oh,
just
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
I'm sorry, Catherine.
I forgot
Yeah,
I had
yeah.
the clicker there.
Let's just go all the way back there.
There you go. It's kind of hard to see.
Yeah, this is the first data that you've seen from the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, Tim, which was administered in the spring of 17?
Spring of 2017, and we just got data the spring, almost summer of this year.
It was June before the national results
right.
came out.
National results.
So these are percentages and not incidences, is that
These are
correct?
percentages, and if you see the red line, the red is Moore County schools, and the blue is the U.S. that's important to note that we are, although it's upsetting to see these numbers, we're not that different from the rest of the country or the state. And notice too that it's 35% the 35% mark is the end of the graph, so that we're looking at the top, the suicide attempt resulting in an injury was 3% in Moore County schools and 2% with U.S. Now this is self-reported. These surveys are taken by high school seniors, all of our high schools. Attempted suicide one or more times during the 12 months before the survey, 9% Moore County schools and 7% the U.S. Again, not a significant difference. I always mark it if it's significant.
It's also self-reported nationwide.
It's also it's self-reported both times, yep. Made a plan about how they would attempt the suicide, 14% in both places. Seriously considered was 17% in both. And then, and the reason these questions are this way is this is the clinical interview, how you decide how much risk the student is at for committing suicide. And so the first question is, how sad and hopeless, and then it goes up from there. So the sign of clinical depression is feeling sad or hopeless almost every day for 2 or more weeks in a row, so that they stop doing some unusual activities during the 12 months before the survey. So that question is specific to the clinical question of, is this person clinically depressed? One of the questions. And 31% overall. It's higher for girls, 41% of all girls, and it's highest for Hispanic girls, 44% of all Hispanic girls.
And that data from the previous slide, which defined the need, was that also from the Centers for Disease Control?
Yes. Yes.
So the timing of this extra funding is helpful, although we knew this, didn't we, intuitively?
We did.
With
we
even
knew.
without the data, we knew that this was needed. I've been a part of some conversations, so.
Was this administered to all high school seniors in 2017?
It was a sample. It was a specific sample, and they were very careful to be sure that the demographics of the students who did take it, they had a very scientific way of choosing which students were given it, and then of the students who completed it, they were careful to align it so that the demographics would match the demographics of our district, so that it's appropriate. And so they adjusted, and they weighted it, and all that complicated statistics.
Do we have any idea on the numbers? How many?
That'll be presented later.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'd like to just weigh
I
on
didn't realize that.
Yeah.
This is just one topic,
Yeah,
but
it was 2,000, but yeah, I'll tell you the more details of it. I've got a thing ready.
Yes, and we'll get back to that. The other thing I'd like to emphasize to the board, and we will need your approval of this as an action item later, but do keep in mind that this does not solve the problem. At a presentation that was made, Tim, that you and Mike made here back in, I believe it was April, where we showed what the recommended ratios were of students to psychologists and students to social workers and students to counselors, that North Carolina is grossly behind what is recommended in terms, and that was an issue for the General Assembly, which was discussed but never acted upon this spring. One that I do think the legislature intends to revisit. Ed and Betty, you might remember.
The only thing they did is ease the requirements for psychologists.
Yeah, but I think it may come up again, particularly if some national trends continue. We know that, and we know that our region in North Carolina tends to be one that lags behind the other regions in North Carolina. So we have a long way to go. My plan for a crisis response team was that I would have a triage unit. I knew that was well below what the need is. So we don't want to sell this as the solution. This is a little bit more help. We're glad to have it. We have a good plan for it. We're grateful for the support, but our quest continues. We have 31% of our seniors. Is it just seniors that were in this sample?
No, all high schools, 9-12.
9 through 12. 31% of our students, according to this statistical sample, 31% report that they have felt sad or hopeless for a 2-week period of time in a row. Self-reporting, I know it can work one way or another, but I think we can do better than that. And we owe it to our children to have a support system there. and to do some of the other things we're doing to try to enliven and enrich their lives. So thank you, Cinda, Tim, board members. Any other questions or feedback?
Where do you anticipate they will be housed? Will these be central office positions?
We are looking at rearranging offices at the Education Center, because we want them to be able to be together.
I was going to say, it's nice to see a long-term vision becoming a reality. It's pleasantly nice to see that for once.
Yeah, that's right. It really is.
Anybody else?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you,
you.
Cinda.
Thank you.
Mr. Locklear, you remain on the con
Yes, sir.
for item E.
Happy to bring to the board again this year, this is the third year, that under North Carolina Department of Public Instruction testing policies and procedures, school districts may apply for a waiver to the North Carolina test proctor requirement after consulting with the regional accountability coordinator and exhausting all other options. This is the third year that we're applying for this waiver the proctor requirement. It was after Dr. Grimacy's persistence of asking questions and digging in that we found that we could do this. This does not take certainly our responsibility and accountability away for administering our testing process in an effective way and an efficient way. And we will continue to do that under Dr. Calcutt's leadership, who now is retired. She certainly set up systems and processes to ensure that was taking place, and we'll continue to do that moving forward. But this is to ask for your endorsement of us applying for that waiver again for the 18-19 school year. Open to any questions that you may have.
Save a lot of time. They spend a lot of time looking for proctors.
Yes, sir.
Crazy.
And I think the waiver shows that we trust our teachers to do
Absolutely.
their job, and I think that's the number one thing.
With your permission, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Item F. Thank you, Mr. Locklear. You're still in the seat, and it looks like you've got some help on the way.
And Ms.
Ms.
Dixon
Dixon.
coming forward, I believe. I'll slide over.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Madam Chair, Dr. Grimacy, members of the board, this is our annual review of our consolidated application for federal funding. As you know, last year was our first year of a consolidated application that encompassed multiple programs. DPI has only released planning allotments for Title I, Title II, and Title III for us right now. So we, in an effort to get our application going, we have received our allotments and are working with our schools and our departments on their planning process. So our first one that we're looking at today is our Title I, and without going into details, we talked a lot about this last month as well, but your Title I program reflects funding for your low wealth students. We do have a significant change this year. We have a shift and have 14 qualifying schools. So we are adding Cranes Creek Middle into a Title I qualified school. Moving forward, we do have 2 schools who could potentially not be Title I next year with the shift in poverty bans and free and reduced lunch, and both of those schools we have grandfathered in moving forward for this year. It's one of those things that it's just a gamble that we have to see with data and enrollment and the ADM and how the poverty bans now with those changes, how that works. But we do have a total of 14 schools moving forward for 18-19. Our planning allotment that we will start off with, you can see $2,890,852 and a big whopping 52 cents. We do have a carryover. It is a little misleading because we are still paying summer personnel payroll, professional development, some of our summer boot camps for our Title I schools and for our students. Some of those figures have not come out before we were preparing for this presentation. So that carryover will look a little bit less than what you see there, but that is currently what we're moving forward with for 18-19. Our second program that we are looking at is our Title II, and we talked about this last month, but just as a refresher, Title II we use for our to improve teacher quality and principal quality and leadership development across our district. We've been fortunate to receive those funds for several years. We have received a planning allotment for Title II to support effective instruction. Our allotment is listed. Again, we have a little bit of a shift with carryover there because we still have some summer personnel, some contract work, our More Learning Conference, and our professional development for our C&I team. All of those numbers haven't quite hit there. Also, we have, of course, our non-public school allotment that comes off the top before we're able to spend for our district, any of our district initiatives. So those funds are also still in our planning allotment, just to kind of give you an idea of where we are for Title II. And then Title III is our language acquisition grant. We use this to support our curriculum and instruction team, and along with our EL students. This goes along with a lot of our GLAD program, our parent advisory council, and program that we have for our EL students as well. We did have a little bit, we lost a little bit. It seems like we are asked to do so much more with our Title III with, of course, less. So we did lose a little bit here. So 42,926 is our planning allotment with some carryover. And then, of course, those summer expenses are in this carryover as well for 18-19. Is there any questions?
Man, I do. I noticed in all three titles that we're responsible for providing services to eligible children attending private, elementary, and secondary schools. How does that work? Who gets the money and how does?
We are required to do an equitable services meeting, and we hold that in March. And we open that to any of our non-public schools. We send out certified letters. We are required to send 3 notices of invitation to them. Those schools that wish to participate. Then I have a one-on-one consultation with those schools. From there, we collect data to see who qualifies. This year, we do not have any students who are qualifying for Title I from the non-public under the new ESSA requirements that are coming from non-public schools. We do have some funds coming out for Title II, and we had no non-public schools interested in Title III from our meeting. So we will probably see approximately $10,000 to $14,000 go to non-public school for Title II support. Now, that's not necessarily money, that's equitable services. So we do have some teachers from some of our non-public schools who are attending our More Learning Conference, so we will equate that cost as an equitable service.
Charter schools get their own, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Any additional questions?
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, board members. And next, we'll invite Mr. Bundy up to provide us with our preliminary look at the impact of the state budget, which for the first time in my 4 years with you has been finalized. We've been trying to figure out how to do this, but we're very pleased. We're very grateful to our legislators for getting their work done in June and putting us in a position where we're beginning to get a clearer picture. Mike, why don't you start out by just giving us an idea of when the board might expect, it's preliminary today, but when would the board expect to kind of get that final take on the combination of our year-end closeout and our state budget impact?
We're looking at presenting our final budget to the board at your August meeting. That'll be the final approval of last year's budget amendment and adjustment. So we'll present that to you in the August meeting. We have received our plan allotment for the new year. We're working on how that relates to setting up the new budget, working on that process as well. Hopefully August, but by the latest would be September to get the new budget approved by the board. So we have a couple of weeks to work on that process, but what we'd like to do is close out last year and then put that new budget on and present that to the board either August or September, but the final budget will be the August board meeting.
So today is our first take on all that information from NCSBA and NCASA about the final budget and how it's going to affect. This is how it looks on Moore County.
Yes, sir.
All yours.
Yes, sir. members of the board, Dr. Grimacy, what I'd like to share is your state budget impact for FY 18-19 and how it does impact Moore County schools. And we'll look at a few items. We'll go through and look at certified positions, principals, assistant principals, teachers. We'll look at classified positions, changes to the benefit rates, adjustment to our state allotments, some cost analysis related to salary and benefit impacts, and then some other items that relate to the state budget. The first item that I would like to discuss is a principal pay scale. Of course, the state adopted a principal scale last year, kind of a new model. They continue that process this year. The average principal raise is about 6.9%. It still has the factors of looking at the size of the school, the ADM of the school, where it's base, met growth, exceeded growth. All those factors still apply. They did provide an increase in the salary by each level in accordance with that new principal scale. They eliminated longevity and advanced and doctoral pay supplements last year, and that still continues in the new budget. This just talks about just that process of looking at the ADM, the growth in the school, and how that impacts the principal salary amounts that are paid to each principal that we have. And this is the new scale. The new scale, the top is 18-19 and the bottom is 17-18. And you see that the format is really consistent between the prior years. The numbers have increased some, being that the state has provided a raise to each level related to the principal performance, the size of the school. Averages somewhere around 4,000 to 5,000 per each different area related to each principal, with that 6.9% average. The state looks at a 3-year performance average for each principal, and they've expressed that in January they will consider the performance for the 17-18 school year. Those results come out in the fall, and then we will look at the principals as far as evaluating their impact to pay in the January payroll period. So we have those to look forward to. We currently have increased the principals for their amount from last year to this year, but the performance will be done in January. So related to principal pay, the board, as a school board, we adopted a new local supplement scale related to principals. We provided a local supplement for education, for experience as a principal, for complexity of school, and that has been well received by our principals. They're very complimentary of the board in your efforts to approve that scale. It allows us to be competitive in relation to acquiring principals to our district, retaining our current excellent principal staff that we have, retention of quality leadership. So that continues to be an impact to our district, and we will move forward with those same scales in the new year, 18-19 school year.
But those are flat supplements as opposed to percentage supplements, and so the amounts stay the same unless the scales are recalibrated.
Yes, sir.
Right.
And the state will provide funding for the increase in the principal pay, the base pay. The state provides funding for that.
And also the incentives, the growth, the academic growth incentives. That's all from the state. That's not from us.
On the state,
Right.
provided by the state.
I know she had a point here that the principals are no longer eligible for advanced and doctorate supplement.
That's correct.
Did they get, if they already have one, they're not, just not going to get them even if they already have their doctorate now?
Yes, sir. That doesn't qualify on the new scale, but we've tried to implement that with our local supplement scale. Yes, sir. Great question.
It's one of those areas where your local supplement scale mitigates that. And
Got it.
Yes, sir. Also, with assistant principals, there's been a pay increase provided by the state for assistant principals. It looks at the A scale, which is related to a teacher, a certified teacher. Last year it was 17% of the A scale plus 17%. The current year, 18-19, is the A scale plus 19%. So the assistant principals also receive an increase. Just to be aware to the board that we have about 17 locally paid assistant principals, so that increase is funded by local obligation to fund those salary and benefits for those locally paid assistant principals. They also do not receive longevity, and in Mr. Dennison's question, in the assistant principal world, they still get advanced and doctorate supplements, just not for the principals.
From the state.
From the state.
Until they become a principal.
Yes, sir.
Then they lose it.
Makes
Then they
sense.
lose
That doesn't make sense, does it?
Here is a copy of the scale for 18-19. I want to just point out a few things to you. Some items are in red. We looked at that there's a tie to the A schedule for the assistant principal. But when you look at this scale, you notice that all the percentages are very different. If you look at year 0, that raise is 1.7%. If you look at year 11, that raise is 15.4%. Year 13 is 16.1. Year 15 is 16.8. And then if you look at year 24, that percent is 1.7. So the percentages are very different between the different years that the state awards the salary for. You'll also notice that from year 15 to year 24, the amount of money is the same amount of pay, $5,950 per month. And then you'll notice in year 25 through year 30, the monthly pay is the same, $6,188 per month. So the scale does have some tiering in it, where in year 0 to 14, there's kind of a step movement, but once you hit year 15, you're kind of stuck in a tier with the assistant principal scale.
I think it's fair to say, though, that the number of individuals that serve as an assistant principal for more than 15 years is not very high.
Yes, sir. If you look at certified teachers have a increase average of 6.5%. There's still consider the highly qualified graduate is part of the process with a new employee, a new teacher. You also have the bonuses that were given last year, continuing to this year for advanced placement, international baccalaureate, CTE, reading and math grades in certain grades qualify for bonuses that are provided by the state. And then there's an increase for our veteran teachers into that if they exceed 25 years of service, there was an increase for them in the current scale.
Mike, how many local teachers do we pay for?
Local teachers, we have around 90 local teachers, and that number would go down with the board approval of the budget. It would go down, and we haven't hired them all yet, so it's kind of hard to pull that number out yet because they're still employing positions. I'm estimating somewhere around 75 would be kind of where we would end up.
Okay.
In the budget,
Yes, sir.
we had 96 last year.
96.
We
and
cut 15.
So it'd be about 80 positions. And that's just an estimate right now because we're still employing positions currently.
On paper, in the budget, it'd be 81, it'd be 80, 81. So the answer for now is 81.
Yeah, and that's an estimate right now.
Subject to adjustments based on how much they all get paid. If there's extra money, it might be 1 or 2, but
Yes, sir.
we cut 15 from 96.
That's correct. Also, when you look at teachers, you have the highly qualified graduate, and that is for certain areas such as EC, STEM, a teacher who teaches in a low-performing school. So all those are attributes that need to be considered with HR and payroll employing those relative positions. Here is the teacher scale. It looks similar to the assistant principal scale. You'll notice again that certain years receive different amounts of percent increase. A year 0 teacher, which is a beginning year teacher, there's no increase in the salary of that position. You'll notice in year 13 that a teacher with 13 years is 14.1% increase. Year 15 is 14.8. You notice in year 24, there's no increase in pay for a teacher with 24 years of service. Again, you see movement in the steps from year 0 to year 14. Then you see a kind of a plateau. Year 15 through year 24, the annual salary is all the same. And then from year 25 through 30, again, there's $52,000 per year for that employee. So again, it's kind of a plateau at those different points with the state scale.
And I set this up with what I said about the assistant principal scale. Now, with the teacher scale, As opposed to assistant principals, there are many people who teach beyond 15 years. There are very few people that are assistant principals beyond 15 years, but there are many people that teach beyond 15 years. And so
That's correct.
we can see that essentially you get to the full value of the position essentially when you get to 15 years.
When you look at classified employees receive a 2% raise for central office personnel, non-certified personnel. The state is also providing funding for bus drivers. There will be an additional allotment for the transportation for the bus drivers in particular, and the state will provide funding for that. They provided funding last year to implement a pay scale for bus drivers, if you remember, and this year they're going to provide funding to cover an average 2% increase for those bus drivers, and John Barath and Mr. Griffin are working on that analysis to provide that result. Also, there is a 1% increase for retirement for supplemental bonus. And then last year, the state adopted a policy of eliminating health insurance for new hires by January 1st of 2021. That's still in the budget bill. So that is an important consideration for new employees that are coming on to.
It's retirement health benefits, right? Not all health benefits.
It's the health benefit for retirees.
Okay.
That's correct.
Yeah, it was good. You needed that clarification because that's not what you said. It's on the PowerPoint, but that's not what you said. Mike, if you could go back to that last slide, please. When you say 2% raise for central office personnel and non-certified personnel, how many state-funded, kind of an idea percentage, how many state-funded non-certified personnel do we have? A large percentage or a small percentage?
There's a relatively large percentage of state funding because all of our custodians are state funded. A lot of our school personnel are state funded by PRC 003, which is non-instructional support. So a majority of those are state funded positions.
Okay, so that's instructional assistants, custodians, a high percentage of those. And then clerical staff?
Clerical staff at our schools.
Okay, a high percentage. But when you look at the breakdown of FTEs by school,
Right.
there also is a substantial percentage of locally funded.
There are some locally funded for some of the either the lower pay positions or the ones that are. I always look at a risk factor in looking at how employees are paid, putting most of the risk on the state, the least risk on the local as much as possible.
Thank you.
We always talk about benefits, and you look at the benefits. The retirement rate this year is 18.86%. Last year it was 17.13%. So again, the retirement rate is increasing. And if you compare that all the way back to 08-09, you'll see the rate was 8.14. So that over the 10-year horizon, that rate is more than doubled in a 10-year period of time. Of course, that is a local obligation cause for the locally paid employees. And also the health insurance. The health insurance is $6,104, and that is an increase from last year of $5,869. And you look all the way back in 08-09, it was $4,157. So again, the benefits continue to increase. That is good for the employee, but there's a cost to the district for that cost increase. Textbooks and digital resources, I know that is an important topic for Dr. Grimacy as we look at converting our paper copy to a digital format. You'll notice that this year with the new allotment for 18-19, the money is actually decreased to $493,000. It was $539 in 17-18. That's a decrease of around $45,000. I've informed Tim Locklear and Dr. Metcalf about that, and they're providing that into their plan, making adjustments to their plan to meet that funding need that we have and look at how that impacts future cost and future needs for our textbook funding.
Mr. Bundy, is that parceled out according to per student? Is that what it is? Or, and I don't mean locally, I'm talking about from the state. How is that figured?
I'm sure the state has a formula. I'm not quite sure what it is, but I know it looks at the taking the total dollar and dividing it across the state. I would assume it was some ADM process that they would use, depending on how the different size districts would have, more need with more students than a district with less students would have less need of that money. But
Would the
assume it's
tier
an ADM
system,
process.
would the tier system come into play in that at all? On that one?
Is ADM formula?
Yeah. Now, given that, it's hard to then explain why we had an increase from 16-17 to 17-18, given that our ADM went down previous to that, so then it goes down again, but now the dollars go down. So we might want to push back a little bit and get an answer to that and follow up
I'll be
with an
glad to
email.
answer.
So I didn't catch that in our preparation for tonight, but my quick answer is that our ADM went down, so our money went down, but then that would not explain why our money went up last year when our ADM went down, actually more substantially previously than it's doing here, so.
I'll be glad to pose a question to the state and see if we can get some.
Please.
They could have increased the amount per student too, for that 1 year. They could have, I don't know.
Good point. Yeah, the increase of 530 to 539 most likely was because they were still increasing the amount of money for textbook funding on a per pupil basis, and so that offset the decrease in ADM. But Mr. Bundy, if you could find out, we could send an email out
Yes,
to
sir.
board members. I would like that answer myself. I should have thought of that before the meeting, I'm sorry.
The next slide relates to central office reductions. Of course, the state has continually reduced that funding. It's in PRC 002, which is central office allotment. And the state continued the reduction this year. Last year it was about $7 million, and this year the reduction is $4 million. The current funding that we receive in the planning allotment is $817,000. If you look at where that has been in the past, I went back to 08-09, and the district was getting $1.1 million in this allotment. So it's been a substantial decrease over the 10-year period to the current amount of funding, about $325,000 between the high in 08-09 to what we currently receive from the state. This slide relates to allotment changes, and the point being is that the state continues to reduce flexibility that districts have. You'll see that there's a lot of no in this slide. No funds can be transferred out for children with disability, academically AIG funding, limited English proficiency, driver's ed funding. Also, any textbook and digital resources can only be used for that purpose. So again, they're limiting, you know, the flexibility that you do have. They're continually reducing that amount of flexibility for the funding.
I got a question on that.
Yes, sir.
Have we transferred money out of the children with disabilities or academically and intellectually gifted or the limited English? I mean, do we normally transfer money between
In prior
those
years,
around
we
the-
have, because you had that flexibility, but in.
Excuse me, did you ever do it for children with disabilities?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's make sure we're clear, understand the question before we answer it.
Right.
Now, with regard to, because then it always goes the other way with our EC funding.
Right.
You know, it leaves other funds and goes there. So we had that flexibility, and we can still do that. We can transfer money into funding for EC services.
You transfer money, you cannot transfer money out.
That's correct. That's what I just said. So that is correct. So with regard to transferring money out of academically and intellectually gifted and limited English proficiency, that we did have flexibility on, and that's where you come in with your answer.
Yes, sir. We did transfer some of those funds in prior years to PRC 003, which is non-instructional support, to employ more positions in our schools for the state funding. In this past year, we did not. We allowed those, we limited those funds to those particular programs. So we've not done it. We didn't do it last year. We won't do it this year. And restrictions are in place for that purpose. But that's why we did the transfer.
And that was to stretch our state dollars and minimize the impact on the local government.
Yes, sir.
And that flexibility was taken away. And so now we cannot stretch our state dollars. We give state dollars back on 001 that we don't use because we can no longer maximize those dollars. And that has put the pressure on us to ask for more support from the local government.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Is that the answer you were looking for,
Oh,
Mr.
yeah,
Dennis?
I know the old one. But they started, that costs us like $1 million a year or more. But what other
I don't think it was that much. No, the original adjustment where the state started to recapture the funding, the term is, what was the term that we used
I
when?
remember, yeah.
There was a term that Mike Griffin and you have used.
You had the ability to convert the positions
Right,
and the.
right.
Conversion,
Understood.
conversion was the word I was
Conversion,
looking for.
conversion,
That was
yeah.
taken away, but
taken
most
away.
recently, the flexibility to use academically and gifted funding and limited English funding, that flexibility was taken away just in the current
Right.
year that we just ended. That was the first time.
Yes, sir.
And outside of those, what area, and you don't have to be specific, what area would be most important for us to have flexibility in that we don't have flexibility in now?
I think it goes back to the ability to transfer funds into the non-instructional support, the 001 allotment, the 003 allotment, because that is a lot of positions at the schools that now we have to use local funds to.
I gave
hire those
everybody a
positions.
chart of that. It was like 171 million bucks that I had, which districts had to and which didn't. Okay, thanks.
Yes, sir.
A question about the textbooks. About what courses are we still having to purchase hard copy books? What percentage would you say of our textbook funds are still going to hard
Yeah, I
copy
would
as
ask
opposed to digital?
Dr. Metcalf or Mr. Locklear, that question.
It'd be very difficult for me to apply a percentage right off the cuff, but what I would say is that the great majority of our resources, we are now either under a digital subscription, or we're looking at digital subscriptions to convert to that. Examples of where we're using, and Mike, you can back me up here, but examples of where we're still using hardback textbooks would be a lot of our advanced placement courses, still using that. We also have a memorandum of understanding with Sand Hills Community College with the courses that our students take there. And so we're reimbursing the cost of those textbooks, which is approximately $60,000 a year there. So that would be where I'd say the great majority of our hardback text. And then when you look at our early literacy, we've got to have those hard texts with those kids. So those would be the examples that would just come off the top of my head of where we're still.
Because I know they're not available in every subject area that we need.
That was the last big one we had for the elementary school. I forget what the name of the book was.
What are we doing in grades 3, 4, and 5 where our children do not have Chromebooks?
Where they don't have Chromebooks. A lot of our schools have, either they've used Title I funds to provide instructional materials with Chromebooks, or they've used different funds to purchase Chromebooks. But they still have access to like the Discovery Ed resources and things of that nature.
Okay, so in Title I
Class
schools,
sets, those types of things.
all right, in Title I schools, we're using Title I funds to provide children with Chromebooks in grades 3, 4, and 5?
I've done some of that, yes, sir.
Some of that.
What about non-Title I schools?
We're talking about a whole district, grades 3, 4, and 5. It may be beneficial to the board that we answer that question. Exactly how do teachers access content in grades 3, 4, and 5? So in some Title I schools, we have some comprehensive distribution of Chromebooks for children. Do they take them home or are they in school?
They don't take them home.
Okay, so they're in school. So during the school day, so in terms of the traditional textbook, the content that the teacher had and the opportunity for parents to see what the child's content was, do we have that opportunity for our students in grades 3, 4, and 5?
We still have some classroom textbook resources. Our principals probably can respond better than that than I can, I'll be honest with you. But we also have Chromebooks and other classroom set materials that our students are using in the classroom set.
So the answer is we're doing the best we can with the availability we have, and that at the district level, we cannot really answer the question.
That's the best I can tell you right now, yes, sir.
And that answers the question. And that's the answer that I wanted to make sure that we made clear. That in the absence of a comprehensive program where each child has a Chromebook, in the absence of that, then basically it's up to our teachers and our principals to kind of figure out the best way to provide content access to our children. Is that a true statement?
Yes, sir.
I don't mean to put you on the spot. I want clarity here to make sure the public is not.
Okay, I'm used to it, sir.
So the public is not confused, okay? This is a burden that is carried by our principals and our teachers. Dr. Metcalf, correct me if I'm wrong. All right, and they deserve credit for creatively doing the best they can because the district is unable to define a platform for teacher access to content, be it digital or text. The district is not able to do that currently. because we don't get enough state funding by virtue of this information about textbook funding, which is being reduced, and we don't have access to digital content because there's not enough funding to provide the subscriptions if we had the Chromebooks, and there's not enough state or local funding to get Chromebooks into the hands of our 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, as we have requested for 3 years. Is that an accurate statement? Okay, does that answer your question?
Takes away
Ms.
our
Carter?
ability to plan.
Yes.
I know 3rd grade has done journeys for literacy, but to me, a lot of that is workbooks and.
Books are over 10 years old.
No. They're every year they get them. They're written in
The
journeys.
workbooks is part of their original contract. That is going out of contract. We're now, as Mike mentioned, we've got some pilots going on to determine what K-5 literacy reading resources we're going to be bringing in.
We adopted the Journeys Basel series approximately 2013 or 12, 13, I believe. And we had an approach that was very comprehensive, district-wide, where teachers were expected to advance at a certain point with certain material in accordance with certain schedules, in accordance with a pace, a prescribed district-wide pace. It's when we concluded in 2015 that we would have more flexibility for teachers and principals. Then the Basel series became more of a backup rather than the primary means. And there were trade-offs with that. But the Basel series is available. It is in now about its 5th or 6th year. And as you get into the 7th and 8th year of any series like that, you're looking at replacing that. But that to replace that with over a 2-year period of time, according to our budget schedule, would be about $2 million to do that. We do not have that kind of money. And so it is incumbent upon our teachers and principals working with our curriculum specialists to do the best they can to provide that. And they do an outstanding job with it, but it sure would be nice if at some point the comprehensive recommendations that we've made would be heard by somebody at the state level. And if not, then eventually at the local level, we've got to figure out a way to bring some comprehensive district-wide definition to what we do to support our teachers and principals, particularly in grades 3, 4, and 5. So that's a unpracticed answer to your question, but I hope it gets a point across, Ms. Carter. Thank you for asking it. Shall we let Mr. Bundy finish his presentation?
Thank you, Tim.
He's now at his punchline.
The next slide just goes over the estimated cost impact for the local obligation related to the state approval of salary and benefits, those local costs. When you look at what the board approved in April 16th, the board approved the budget that was presented by Dr. Grimacy, and it had 2 items in there related to the impact of the state budget. One was $500,000 for the estimated cost of any potential impact of the state budget, unknown at that time. Then also a potential cost estimate for unemployment related to positions within our school district. So when you look at those 2, the total is about $550,000. That was part of our identified need in our budget process. When I look at the estimated cost for the impact of local obligation, it's around $587,000. So those budgeted items that were approved by the board are used to pay for any cost obligation related to our local obligation for the state raise and benefits for locally paid employees. So that is a good thing that the board set aside that money in the budget process to cover this impacted cost.
So you're about $38,000 short.
Yeah, a little short.
And we're not too concerned about that at this point, because what has not been computed yet is the $250,000 in your budget for the shift of our shift from percentage-based local supplements to scale-based local supplements. We believe that $38,000 may be computed into that. It also means that we have enough funding to recalibrate those scales, and that's a work in progress now. I understand that in social media there's been some questions about that. We're not done yet. We are still this budget is still a work in progress, and to the extent that we have the funds, we are looking at recalibrating the scales as best as we can and doing the best we can to try to meet the 8% those scales were built on based on last year's salary scale. So we're just advising patience on everyone's part because we're still, this process is still underway.
Yes, sir. You recall that this past budget cycle that the House and Senate passed House Bill 90, which has a budget impact. That was kind of the phase-in approach for the class size reduction. And based on the current allotment that we received from the state has provided 7.5 positions, FTE positions for our enhancement teachers. So that is an estimate of increased state funding of $450,000 to cover the cost of employing those 7.5 positions.
Or keeping us from having to cut those positions.
Or cutting those positions, yes.
How many enhancement teachers do we have approximately?
We have currently about 60, Tim, in that ballpark.
65, K-8.
Locally funded.
All of them are.
Or is that all, or is that just the locally funded?
That's all.
That's all, okay.
K-8.
Well, the state doesn't fund any of them specifically.
Right, yes, sir.
I know what we do with the salary, so.
But this is a positive aspect. This helped us from those dark days in January and February. We're very grateful for HB 90.
Yes, sir. This slide goes back to Dr. Grimsey's statement about the scale-based supplement versus a percentage-based supplement that was approved by the board. Again, we're looking at, there was $250,000 set aside in the budget process related to the scale-based supplement. We're in the process, as Dr. Grimsey shared, of recalibrating that cost. What would it cost to effectively get back to the full 8% for the 18-19 calendar year, school year for our employees? So we're still trying to.
For our teachers, 8% was the basis of the scale for teachers, and we'd like to try to match that if we could in this first year, particularly in a year where teachers got such a sizable raise from the state.
That's correct, yes, sir.
Or that some teachers did. It's an average.
This slide just gets back to that, again, the state looks at increasing the reporting process for curriculum and instruction. There's continual need for reporting, more reporting, with less funding for central office, that we see the reductions in central office. So again, you have more requests with less dollars and less funding to have those available positions that you need. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well, the point with this last slide was to show that these policy mandates were built into the budget bill.
Just, could you go back to that last slide?
They cut central office staff.
Yes, ma'am.
To be able to complete that. So there'll be additional work.
Just stating the facts.
I just have to smile at that, requiring a report to, on the measures taken to implement cursive writing and multiplication tables. What kind of report can you turn in on those two things?
I want to know the teachers.
And our teachers
That-
just.
Yeah, what?
48 teachers spent
No.
22 hours on
We'll
cursive
defer to
writing. How's
Mr.
that going to be
Locklear
done?
It's going to be
Required.
a teacher.
Director Bridget Johnson, Director of Curriculum Instruction, Bridget Johnson submitted a survey report on what, it asked 4 or 5 different questions about do we teach it. And of course, we teach what the standards require us to teach, and asked about if you have a structured program for doing it. We don't necessarily have a structured program for doing it, so we responded to those questions as honestly and openly. Apparently, the state legislature did not feel like they got enough information, or were disappointed with some of the information they saw, and so they then, in this year's budget bill, put this in there that they're going to require a more structured report on how it's being taught in schools,
With no
It's gonna
money
be
to
very
support it.
specific.
with no additional monies or
Just
funding.
to-
And no money for extra textbooks to use for teaching writing.
So teachers are coming
supplementing
up on
that.
their own to figure out.
No
the curriculum.
extra money for math books to be able to, for children to take home. I mean,
Now I'm going to blow your mind. I was at the meeting when this decision was made. This was not on the agenda. The bill had to do with something else. I forget what it was. Pat Hurley comes up and she said, she brought this part up about the reporting for the cursive writing. Says because we didn't get the information we wanted last year, so we're going to put it in this bill. The whole thing lasted about 5 minutes, and it was in the bill with the other stuff, and that was it.
In the budget bill.
In the budget bill. And she said, well, research shows this. But there was no documentation, no discussion. She mentioned it, everybody went along with it, and it happened in 5 minutes.
So the
That's
process
how
now
it
is how DPI then determines what the reporting structure is going to be for
Boy,
this. Is that how?
They'll let you know, it's gonna be
And they
very
have less staff as
specific.
well.
And I'd like to tag along with what you said about the administrative costs in central office, so that you're aware for the principal salary, how that's determined, because it's based on ADM, and it's based on whether or not a school meets
That's
standards
correct.
or whatever. This is an example. From July 1, 2018 to December 31, 2018, the salary will be based on the ADM for 17-18 school year. And during the January 1, 2019 to January 30th, 2019, the ADM will be based on the 2018-19 school year. And the same thing happens with school stores. So we have to make 2, 3, 4 adjustments on principal
That's
salaries
correct.
during the year to comply with what the law says.
That's correct. So
And when you talk about central staff, it's crazy.
a principal's salary will actually adjust
Right,
in
Several
accordance
times a
with
year,
those
yeah.
adjustments, yeah.
So with us not having a program for cursive writing, teachers are gonna have to come out on their own to figure out what they need to do for their classroom. They're gonna have to be trained. Is that correct?
Well, we teach.
Well, keep in mind that the state mandate only has to do with reporting
That's
at this
right.
point.
We have
So that would depend on how the General Assembly reacts to whatever it is that we provide in response to the more detailed report, which is at least a year away. And that's not just cursive writing. That one seems to have been the one that's gotten all the attention. It also has to do with the degree to which teachers engage students with use of multiplication tables as a means by which to get students to learn their multiplication, which we do a lot of. I'm invited often to compete with 3rd and 4th graders as to how rapidly and accurately I can compute as many multiplication problems as possible, and we have very competitive children in Moore County who like to win. I'll say I hold my own just fine.
Along the same lines for this reporting, did the, and Ed might know this, did the bill to report movies shown in classrooms go through?
I don't think so, no. I didn't see that one.
It was another report.
Yeah, we have a lot of interesting, this is a very interesting topic, but I also know we have another interesting
Yes, we
topic
do.
on the agenda that we
And
need
we
to
need
get
to get it done.
Yeah,
Thank you,
just looking
Tim.
at the time.
Thank you.
Thank
Again,
you,
that's
Mike.
just, that's a report, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
There's no action tied to either item G or H. And at this time, Mr. Barath, if you could facilitate,
If I may, recommend a quick little 5-minute break so that I can bring them in, set up, and get all the drawings laid out.
and we'll want to remember that board members will have a dinner break here, perhaps by no later than 10 after 5.
We're gonna move as fast as we can.
5-minute break and then a 20-minute discussion.
Okay,
Madam Chair?
short break.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Process update. Mr. Barath.
Thank you. Here with us, the board's familiar with Tom Hughes with SFLA Architects and Mohan Kick from SFLA Architects. They're here to walk you through our preliminary approach here to the new Southern Pines Elementary School. We're going to talk you through the site, the challenges with it, and also some of the solutions to the program and to how to fit this building on a step-down small site. With that, I'll turn it over to Tom.
And would you like the board members to move, gravitate to the table?
Quick little overview on the PowerPoint, take less than 5 minutes, sort of get you oriented. This is our third go-around, so we've got everyone right now out under construction. Aberdeen bids on Thursday, good participation, expecting 5 at least to bid, so we're looking really good with that. So third iteration, walking back through Southern Pines Elementary School, next in the run. So I'm going to do a quick little orientation piece with you. You know, again, we're part of a bigger concept here.
Mr. Hughes, can I ask you to just be close to the mic so that folks on,
I got it.
or folks, just so folks online are hearing.
All right. We're part of a bigger site plan. This is the conditional use proposal. We are in the upper corner. You saw the little star kind of rotate out so you know where we are. And we're adjacent to a residential neighborhood directly to the east. This is our site. Right now, as you can see, all wooded. It's an undeveloped site and no roadways or anything associated with that, but it does have a very proximate adjacency to what was historically the West Southern Pines neighborhood area. So just conscious of that and the tie-in and certainly the relationship between those. A little bit closer, you can see we're a wooded site, Glover Street, Carlisle, both of which now currently dead end. We've got Tillman that doesn't really go anywhere, West Low that runs up, passes Carlisle, and then turns back in. There is nothing on West Low between Carlisle and Glover, and West Michigan runs all the way up and through. So we've got a sort of developed, undeveloped area, and so it's been a little bit of a challenge, but understanding the relationship with the neighborhood as well as the future development represented by the conditional use plan, how do we begin to tie all of that together? Additionally, with all of that, we have a quite challenging site. From the front of our site, if you take the extension of Carlisle to the back of our site, we have an 80-foot drop. So we have a contour challenge, and that has been a really pretty engaging part of all of our piece. If you can see, numbers, we go from about 508 and we drop back to the back left corner down to 424, I think. So it's a bit of a challenge, and it has been. We have gone around and around with understanding the site and really looking at retaining walls and access. How do we address the neighborhood? How do we get people in and out of the site? And we've had probably at least 24 different site plans to go through and understand how to best utilize the site and to keep the cost down. For a comparison, and I just wanted to give you an idea, so this is a view that you're all familiar with. It's looking out the front door across the street, 20 foot. So from where we are at the front door to the tree line across the street is basically the depth of our site. That drops 20 feet. We drop 80 feet. So just to give you some sense of the challenge that we've had to avoid retaining walls, balance the site, keep the dirt on, not have to bring it in, make it all work, and let the building begin to address that as well, and still make it an exciting and inviting educational environment that's going to be the pride of the neighborhood that it's in. So it's been a challenge, and I don't want to overdo it, but it's been a lot of work to get there to this point. So most of our work has centered on the site plan. So we're going to take a look at that first. This is the site plan as you have in the end at the bottom of the site, and again, you know what, I can just take this with me, right? All right, so at the bottom of the site, we have Glover. We're going to be extending Carlisle across to the front of the site. And really that became a kind of governing point for how do we let the building address the road, how do we give it a presence, and we're really settled on, we looked at a lot of different ways, facing the neighborhood, facing the street, like a building that faces the street. And we've worked very closely with John and Roger and staff to come through all that. We've also worked closely with Town of Southern Pines and NCDOT to understand the relationship. Really the wrestle point became how do we deal with vehicular traffic student drop-off versus bus traffic. and knowing that we needed to separate them, but wanting not to engage too much in the neighborhood, but being able to utilize that connection. So that came back to Glover, which is the second street up, where we decided to use that as the bus access, bringing buses through the neighborhood, a lot less disruptive, a very smaller time frame, and easier to control, manage, knowledgeable people, and keep the parents out on Carlisle. Keep it on the main road. Carlisle goes down to the main access drive coming in the larger plan. And so that really became a governing piece of how to develop the site. From that piece, it was then the challenge, as always, is stacking depth on the site. And to be able to get the stack space that we needed for parent drop-off, to be able to bring people in, bring a loop around, and get that 1,500 to 1,900 stacking depth that we needed at the front door, and to bring students in. So those things began to sort of dictate. For a long time, we actually had the building flipped the other way. We just couldn't get the stack to work. We tried bringing the parents in Glover, didn't give us enough space. It all started to settle out, but we also faced a lot of conditions where we were having retaining walls. We were kind of forcing it in, and it just didn't make sense. And quite honestly, at the very end, just kind of flipped the whole site over, went the other way, and a lot of things started to fall into place. The best thing I can tell you is we have avoided, to the greatest degree possible, retaining walls on the site. I mean, the challenge has always been at the very back, and at the back of the site, we are going to have a retaining wall that sort of fills in the back of the play area to give us that level playground. But that gave us the most latitude to be able to have the contour sort of run out at a percentage grade that wouldn't affect the building as much. The play area is a little easier, and we need it to drain anyway, so it all sort of drains to the back of the site. We do have detention basin in the back because that is the lowest corner of the site, and I think we still address the neighborhood well, which for me was always a very important piece of being able to make a tie to that neighborhood, to be able to visually access the site through the neighborhood for parents, for kids to play, I mean, just for the connection, the visual connection. We don't yet know what's going to happen on this site, but it's a very small and narrow site. So I think using that as sort of a buffer between the school and the residential development, and we'll see what happens with that site as time goes on. So I really, at this point, feel rather good about the fact that we have a plan that in a lot of ways is similar to what we've done at Area 1 and what we've done at Aberdeen. So there's always been a consciousness that there needs to be a certain parity, if you will, between them, and certainly the way they operate, the main street, the classroom wings, the organization. Here at the base, we have a pre-K through 1. The back end of it, the second wing, is actually a 2-story wing because it's stepping down the site, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But if I go a little bit closer, you can see that we've actually stepped the main building. The biggest challenge we had, and for me was important, was to get that building so that it addressed the street. And we have managed to get the building at 490 and the main door, the finished floor elevation at 490. So the building will address the street. We worked hard. A lot of times we had it down in the hollow, and it just didn't. It was a 1-story building. It wouldn't have had a presence. And it's important that it addresses this neighborhood, that it kind of brings this neighborhood together. So we did that. We brought it in. We have an intermediate step where we kind of step it down 2 foot 8 inches to an intermediate piece, and then it steps down again another 2 foot 8 inches to a lower floor, the second back floor. I think you can see some of it behind Mahan. And then in the very back, there's a lower floor below that. So we have a 2-story wing in the back and a 1-story wing in the front. What a job. It has been a challenge to make this work in a cohesive school. It's elementary school kids. How do we keep it together? It wants to spread itself out, and yet we want to keep it together. So there's been a kind of push and pull. So in the end, this is the way that the site works. The student bus loop entry comes in, around, across the front, drops students, back out, and out Carlisle. Bus entry and service entry, everyone comes in the back, bus drop and service, circles around and circles back out. And coincidentally, this also solved all of our fire loop problems. So we have emergency access vehicle completely around the building, but we're using it as service drives as well. So we solved that problem all at once as well. In this case, the fenced play areas for the pre-K Ks are along the back area, and we've got a nice courtyard area. We're looking at an amphitheater or some kind of outdoor assembly area. and staff parking in front of, and then auxiliary staff parking on the side of the building. Any questions about the site?
How far are you away from Morganton Road?
From Morganton Road?
Does Carlisle come out into Morganton?
I'll go back to here, yeah. All right, site here, Carlisle will be extended, come down, and Morganton, there's the little establishment on the corner.
For some reason, I thought you're going straight down onto Morganton. I see it.
There is a opportunity for a right-in, right-out road there, and that's part of the overall development for the commercial properties. You will not have full motion there, which means you cannot cross traffic and go out.
It would just
That's in Brucewood at the.
right-hand turn in, right-hand turn out. And we've built that, our share of that cost into the budget.
Right, well, that's in the land purchase agreement.
That's correct. But it's only to the extent that what we would pay if we were building it as a single two-lane road in and out. And then the developer may enhance it, but we don't want people to think that all that's built into the budget.
Correct.
You may be doing this next, but what are the grade levels within each of the buildings? And in
That next, got it. All right?
Would there be any benefit at this point in board members getting a little closer to one of these that they
Yeah.
could see, or?
Yes.
Let me run through, the building won't take but a second.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Grimacy. So then if we look closer at the building, you'll see the building is stepping down. We started at three-dimensional, but we're actually moving down with the building as the site runs away. At the, and let's call this the main level, because we do have a level and one out below. So we have pre-KK and 1 on the first classroom wing, adjacent to administration. We like to keep the little ones close. I think it really gives them their sort of their own identity in that place. Really using this centerpiece as a collaborative junction. We have the media center, the project rooms, the art rooms, the robotics lab, all those kind of pull-out spaces, as well as auxiliary support spaces in that area. And then in the back piece, the gym is below, so just ignore that. We have second and third on the upper floor as well, resource rooms. So this kind of collaborative meeting space in the middle. We always try and keep media center as that kind of physical and spiritual center of the building. There is an intercommunicating stair at the end of the long axis that will tie the two together down at the second story wing. At the second lower piece, the fourth and fifth are below. We have a larger collaborative space in that area. We have the gymnasium, dining, kitchen. We have the 2 self-contained rooms. There was a lot of discussion at Aberdeen about keeping self-contained close to those assembly spaces and media center. So really very adjacent, go up the stairs and you're right back into that communicated collaborative area, so minimize that travel distance as well. We have music in the back with the adjacency to the platform that's part of the gymnasium assembly area. The bus loop entrance will again come in the back, so we have a covered entrance that leads directly into the building, no gaps, as well as an auxiliary opportunity to enter into the dining kitchen for a staging area as well.
Handicap access, Tom?
Handicap access will be in through, there's an elevator just in the bottom corner of the dining kitchen that will intercommunicate up and down. So we have that.
But with the students, if you have wheelchair-bound students, they'll have to go through the dining room to get down to.
No, they'll be able to come right in the entrance in and right to the elevator. We put the elevator right directly next to, point out the elevator.
So lower level, the entry is here, elevator is located right here.
Oh, I thought it was over back in the corner there.
Right.
No, sorry.
From upper level, if you're coming in entry, we also have, because we have kind of a little bit of a split level, there is ramps that basically makes the entire school accessible.
So there's steps to go down and then ramps that come in. And it kind of separates the volumes as well, gets some light into that corridor to liven it up and keep it bright and airy. So a quick little look again, just the roadway level, how the building itself is stepping down. I think how we've solved that at this sort of intermediate stepping level is going to be quite a dynamic facility, offering some. So I invite you to come up and a little closer look. And we engage in some deliberate conversation.
Ask you guys to break into groups, partner up, find a buddy, twos, and we're going to start circulating around a group to talk about the site here, and then another group could begin talking or two about the floor plan and the program relationships over there. So, or I guess with the numbers, I guess split in something like that as far as.
Once you take that one, you know the site, you know that, I'll take site.
You can pull this out here so there's some room for you.
Pull it out here.
I had it out of the way.
Yeah, we just put it back
What's
there
that?
so it wouldn't get in the way.
I'm ready, I'm ready.
Clearly state, is it a two-story building?
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. All this is beyond my level of expertise.
Well, we try and make it simple.
I gotta trust somebody, I trust you guys.
Is it a two-story building? Yes, I would call it a two-story building.
It looks like a walk-up basement.
Exactly.
Oh, no, still,
But it comes out on both
I
sides.
don't know what we're gonna do the project. If Bradley comes and says I need to do it, let's do it.
So vehicle queuing, come in from here, pick up, drop
So the fenced-in area.
The fenced-in area would be correct in this area. That was one of the feedback that we had taken back from some of the other projects. They wanted that to not be out there on the front. So
I think what Tom says, there's kind of a hillside in between the wings as well, so the ground is going down a full level in between the wings. There's a lot of space in there.
Yeah, kind of isolated and, kind of like
DOT just to enable us to.
That area.
Come on down, Mary Catherine.
Do I have to,
No, ma'am.
no?
We took her table, so she.
Yeah, I really have a choice.
Extension Carlisle. So we extend Carlisle, it's required
I think some of the interior architecture in that middle space will be interesting.
outside in this development.
Where the doors chip.
So this goes on.
Well, for all of these classrooms, our first through pre-K classrooms, they all have to have two exits. So that's why they're on this one story.
That's whether you're talking about opens into the room.
So-
Something very simple.
Well, they have to open
Basically,
out
the
too.
egress, yeah, the direction of egress.
The building code says they have to open out.
Okay,
Yep.
I couldn't remember, I studied some of that way back.
The door hardware has to have one action, so you push on the thing and it opens.
That's where the cafeteria is.
Oh, that must be, about having a conference with the parents about the conference. There's only one long exit. Could there be access here for a situation where somebody doesn't?
Well, the problem with that, I mean, we could explore a different location.
I wouldn't necessarily move it, I like that idea.
Well,
But I'm thinking of
it's access control, and that, part of this is during operating hours, these doors would all be locked.
Yeah, so they come in this
So
way, they have to get
check
through the
in.
office.
Correct.
Yeah, that just seems like a long way to go.
Well, there's a second way out for the principal from their office.
We just sacrificed the assistant
No, I'm talking about if they're in that
principal.
conference
Well, in the conference room, yeah, I don't,
Well, and the principal has another conference room.
yeah, there's more than one conference.
So there's,
These are used
That's the
for
itinerary,
IEPs
right.
and 504s, but I'm just thinking too, it would be very convenient for parents to be able to come in and go directly
But if
into
they
a
need to
conference
check
room.
in.
But, yeah, that would be.
Will all buses just access in this way, or is there any way for a bus to come?
we're thinking of those as very collaborative spaces, so like you can kind of, use them from the media center, or if you had a special program or project, use that space.
What would you estimate the additional cost because of the
The grade change, well, two-story and there's a little tension. You actually build less roof, but the stairs and the elevated floor actually introduces a little addition.
But all the other ones are gonna be two-story totally, right?
Pinehurst has to have two stories because of the size of the site. The others are single story. Aberdeen and Area 1 are both one story. So every site, it's like I said, every site has its own challenges.
Yeah, for some reason, I thought the others were gonna be two-story too.
My mother-in-law was a principal.
And the stairs usually, are a little more expensive to build.
Talk about
No, I've seen all I need to see for right now.
So this is the, this is where they
fine with this. We're working on them all. But, they hardline everything that way. It makes the drawing look very fixed. But
Yeah, it looks very
we're really at the first stage.
We didn't want to include it just yet.
Yeah, I mentioned this one because this came up.
Take a sideline. Yeah, somebody's at the back. They tend to be here, oral performances. If you're sitting in that corner and somebody from about here, right? Our predominant audience is chairs on the floor. If you remember, we laid them out. If you have a bunch of.
You're talking about renting chairs.
That's what this room is for.
Well, unless they built chairs into the. Correct. We rent chairs for graduation. Own chairs.
Again, this crowd that's so big in most cases. So, okay, well, you're right. This is the biggest school we'll have.
Yeah.
Got you boxed in there.
If I drive in,
Because that came up on the other one, so we kind of moved it back. I don't know what they did.
You normally have that problem? Or?
Some of them are exiting that way. So
It's always been on the left side.
So area one, I think, that bank is shorter and a little tall.
So once I sit for a
At some
while,
point, we decide how many chairs we need to buy.
Well, that used to get me when I had my hip replaced.
Have in it, yeah, and that's probably
Fine
the bigger
now.
limiter right
Boy,
there.
I'm fortunate I don't have any back problems.
But honestly, if I'm watching a performance on the stage, I don't want to be sitting way back here. I'd rather be,
Yeah.
I'd rather be right here.
Okay, so
I had a
that's
cyst
an
on my
idea.
spine.
That's the distribution room for data.
Oh, yeah, I knew that.
So MDF is the main distribution.
Problems prior to
IDF
that.
is forgotten, but it's.
Yeah, that's, start messing around with the spinal cord, that's a little tricky.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna change that to.
We were having a discussion about, you can see on the second floor, because you go up and down.
Pre-K is.
Most often this
Well, we're gonna have
forever.
And I'm gonna leave the fruit and cheese and crackers out there. Have y'all got some of that? Please.
I've been eating the cheese and crackers.
What, about 10 years ago?
End up down here.
It's in Sullivan's
Well, I understand that. I mean, adults, that makes sense. You know, when I'm third grade, you know, I'm going to adults for thinking, teachers want to get quality of life.
Well, Lizzie Gardner has some ideas about
We're not done yet. But once we're done, it's done.
In the pre-K is here, this is where they have their 3-foot. They'll be around the outside of their exploratory in the middle.
You don't think that's
What's going on? Between these? This is all relatively flat.
the bigger it is.
Outside. From this point here, you're up here. Level. And then it slopes down. You have a sidewalk in the classrooms now.
Safety reasons. Where,
How many cars can you stack?
where are you shutting it off?
We've got the appropriate stacking. I think we got it up to 22 and 8 feet, 22,000 linear feet of stacking.
So how many cars?
Suburban
Fence or 4 feet?
The parking space is 20 feet wide. So 220, 800 and some, but they really, you don't get that close together. So it's,
Well, a car is usually about 16.
About 50% of our students are driven to school by their parents.
So it's gonna be.
So how many students are we gonna have in school?
there's 800 students.
800, so it's 400, so we figure maybe there'll be a couple, so you need like 300 cars.
Hopefully they won't all be there soon.
They will be, some of them will be there real early.
Well, I've seen that happen at Cameron when they're folding laundry at 12. They want to get us to.
Pull it back this way.
Well, then you have to.
No.
As long as it's not that.
I gotta be able to see the board.
The higher it is, the less the slope. Right now, we're just sort of mitigating cost versus slope and trying to find the right answer.
And we're like, I bet that was a really good one. I'm sure there's a lot of.
Oh, yeah.
Work to secure perimeter.
You're already out of time, so you can get your.
Yeah. Well, they had a site, so yes.
Oh, okay.
They had a site.
Okay, got it. So, yep, okay, so here's the main entry, it's right here, okay? So the parent pickup drop off is along here, you come in, same as all the other schools. Hold in, same administrative function suites. Your pre-K, kindergarten, first grade's right across here. As Tom said, we're using the common use spaces to make up the difference between the two classroom buildings. Robotics, maybe space rooms, and are down here at second, third grade up here. Stairs here, downstairs, and you're at fourth and fifth grade down there with self-contained classrooms. So when you come down here again to work with the site, we had to step the building down, so there's some steps here again that Tom was talking about here and down here, and that kind of creates its own space that way there too. Don't these feel like it when they're built? The gym.
Well, what do you think, Catherine?
It's a school.
It's certainly gonna be.
Pretty cool.
There will be people that think that probably
Yeah, that's nice.
So for handicap
Good.
access, the child.
Oh, yeah.
Let's be happy with it all.
Identify different kind of space and
So they
We get all the free.
What's our drop off here and here? How many steps?
Drove right through it.
We had that level problem at Sandoz Farm Life too.
And then for the gym being here, there's windows along the corridor, so you look down into what's going on. We have teacher workrooms.
I'll take that MOA with me to the county commissioners.
Core group here to have a
I
teacher.
got an email from one of their staff asking if I was
And
gonna bring
core
it.
group and teacher
So I
work.
guess I'll just give it to Laura when I get there. Yes.
I've got everything in the file, and I just put it over there with Elena's stuff. So as soon as I get it back, we'll just hand it to you after the meeting.
Or in the morning, whatever's easier for you. I guess I'll just give it to Laura. I'll make sure we have some copies of it before I take
Yeah,
it.
scan me a copy of it. I try to keep everything because when I do the minutes, I've been linking those things to the minutes, so there's always that signed document there. So whatever documents you guys have that are signed,
May take two.
Come down the stairs, come down, you go straight out, you come down, you go straight out.
yeah. Yeah, because I'll need the scan, I'll need the scanned copy of it to the minutes.
Well, 91 likes on it. I don't anticipate it being a big deal.
Yeah, around this.
And now I've just jinxed myself. Now they'll grill me for an hour. Be my lord.
I'll check it out on the video.
Yeah. You want to see some good entertainment like you just saw him grilling me.
Also, in Aberdeen, because it's also the way to get in for music is to use this as your main preparing staging, and then you bring everyone in that way without bringing them to the space.
You're not gonna have time to eat if we don't hurry. I'm trying to get his attention. Dr. Grimacy.
The yellow bus, yes.
None that I'm aware of unless, now we don't have any with the ones who've just left.
So you're
We
looking
had
at
2 last year.
That's exactly right. Just don't use that when you build these buildings, you know.
Oh, yeah. We're very methodical though.
Has anyone in the furniture division come out with something better for school cafeterias than those awful tables with a text?
Yeah, you're on the lower level. You're right, you're on the lower
God,
level.
they're so awful.
So you
I
got your
know
fourth and fifth
logic
right
behind
here.
them, but
And the rooms, I don't know the square footage, they should all be
Just
about
hold that thing
900. She's part of the
no, but you have your staff meetings.
Yeah.
We used to get the 10th grade writing test.
He wasn't at that meeting.
This was just a user.
Yeah, you get a little more.
When he gets back, because he's missing everything.
That's right.
So just like Aberdeen, the little collaboration area, the upper grades there for that as well.
Okay, what else they need to see?
This was it.
This was the best one.
I done told him.
I'm aware of that. Can I have that, please?
Oh, certainly.
Can I have the microphone?
Microphone.
Madam Chairman?
I know what you're pointing at.
You want to announce
Recess?
or do you have?
Giving you the mic.
I'm going to call a recess. We're going to go into a dinner break, and we'll come back to the regular meeting. Be back at 6 o'clock, which will include closed session at 6.
You've already approved the agenda for the.
We have
The
two
work
agendas.
session agenda.
Oh, you have a. If you Yep.
Okay. I call the Board of Education meeting back to order. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
I move the board enter closed session for confidential personnel matters to prevent the disclosure of confidential student record information and to consult with the board attorney and preserve the attorney-client privilege pursuant to General Statute 143-318.11A3 and A6, General Statute 115C-402, General Statute 115C-319, and 20 U.S.C. 1232G.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries 5-0. We'll be back in half an hour, 6:30. Call the regular board meeting of the Board of Education back to order. Hold on a second. Where's my agenda? Thank you.
Section 3.
Thank you. Are there any, is there a motion to, and we've already approved the agenda earlier today. Are there any motions to amend the agenda at this time?
None here.
None? Okay. We'll move forward. I'd like
So,
to,
Madam Chair, just to be clear, so the agenda stands
the agenda stands as
as
presented.
presented?
Yes, the agenda stands as presented.
Great.
I'd like to introduce Ms. Payton Caldwell.
Come on.
Come up for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Right there.
Can you please stand? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to introduce Miss Evie Miller. And she will provide the inspiration today. She's a rising fifth grader at West Pine Elementary.
Today, hi, my name is Evie Miller. Today, my inspiration is Katherine Johnson. She was the first African-American mathematic at NASA and helped John Glenn go into orbit. There are many things in life that are hard, like cleaning your room or paying bills, but what she did was harder than anything else ever done before. She had to prove to NASA that she had what it takes to be a part of the NASA team while being a woman and an African American. And in fact, she was so good and proved to herself so well that John Glenn would not go into orbit or into space without knowing that she was the one who double-checked the calculation to bring him home. She inspires me to work hard every day and never give up on my dreams, no matter how hard it looks. Thank you.
Peyton and Evie, we'd like to take a
Peyton,
picture
come up
with
here.
you. Hold on.
Shake hands.
Oh, hold on.
No, take a picture. Take a picture first.
Oh, picture, then shake hands.
Picture.
All right.
Wait. Get up there for the picture.
And the parents, please stand up. Acknowledge. Wait there.
You, baby.
Thank you, baby.
Thank you, Evie. Well done.
Thank you, well done.
Just make 'em-
Thank you very much. All right, I'd like to take a moment of silence. All right, thank you. Let's go ahead and the next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. For those of you that were here earlier, these were many of the items that we discussed at our work session earlier today. Is there a motion for the consent agenda items?
I move the consent agenda be approved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Do you need some water, Dr. Bob? You're good? Your bottle is empty.
You're empty.
Tell everybody what this is, Madam Chairman. Is this the superintendent's report?
I think he was asking me to tell everybody that this is the superintendent's report is next. Dr. Bob, the first one of the new year. He's getting ready.
Better be good.
No sharing.
Madam Chair and members of the board, while our students and teachers enjoy their summer break, our principals and district leadership team members are working feverishly to prepare for the school year. And believe it or not, our principals, assistant principals, and district administrative team members will gather in just 16 days for our annual Leadership Conference, which represents the leadership team's official start to the 2018-19 school year. Meanwhile, our 2018 summer to-do list includes the construction of a school on Camp Easter Road. Were you all aware of that? Well, I've been driving by the site with some regularity this summer, but last week I took my first official tour of the site with John Barath. If I had to pick one takeaway to share, it would be the enormity of the facility. I really had not appreciated the size of the property during my many drive-bys, and I had not grasped the size of the structure from my review of the official drawings. With school construction I've overseen in the past, I always seemed to overestimate the actual size based on my study of the drawings. This time, it just seems like it's all bigger than the way it looks on paper. Whether it's the cafeteria or the gymatorium, or when one stands at the door to the media center and looks up and down the hallway that will soon house grades 2 through 5, we have designed a school to educate 800 students, and it is clear that that facility is going to serve that purpose well. The property also seems larger when one stands closer to the rear of the boundary and looks back across the site at Camp Easter Road. There's going to be plenty of space for the playgrounds and for queuing up parents' cars as they deliver and pick up their children before and after school. I hope all of you will have the opportunity to take a tour sometime in the near future. It was a very impressive experience for me, and I want to offer my compliments again to John and Roger Leeson and our partners with SFL and A Architects and the J.M. Thompson Construction Company. Next, I'm delighted to officially introduce the newest members of our leadership team, and so let me start by asking Ms. Jan Lovelady to join me up here at the podium. Jan? Stand here. Ms. Lovelady is now our permanent Director of Child Nutrition Services. She joined our child nutrition staff as a cafeteria assistant in 2003 and was later promoted to cafeteria manager before being promoted again to the child nutrition office as a supervisor. She was named interim director of child nutrition services following the departure of Amanda Cagle earlier this year. As a manager, supervisor, and interim director, Jan has been responsible for purchasing, inventory management, food safety, food production, staff training, and personnel management. She has a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration with an emphasis in accounting from Biola University in California. Please join me in offering our congratulations, welcome, and best wishes to Jan Lovelady, our new Director of Child Nutrition Services. Next, I'd like to ask Mr. Sean Krinsicki to join me at the podium. Yes, this is the same Sean Krinsicki we've seen other times before. And board members, you actually approved this man to be permanent into his permanent role as principal of West End Elementary School back in April, but you need to stay here. There is no mistake being made. There has been a mistake previously made in that we've never formally recognized Sean before the board. We need to do that. So tonight we remedy that oversight. Sean has been with Moore County Schools since 2000. He taught at New Century and Cranes Creek Middle Schools and most recently served as principal of the Community Learning Center at Pinckney. He assumed the role as interim principal at West End last December, and he is a graduate of the Sandhills Leadership Academy. He also holds a bachelor's degree from the University of California at Santa Barbara. Tonight's California night, you notice that? And a master's degree from the University of North Carolina at Pembroke. Please join me in offering our overdue congratulations and welcome and best wishes to Mr. Sean Krinsicki, our new principal at West End Elementary School. No, you got to shake. Thank you.
I look forward to visiting.
And finally, it is my distinct pleasure to invite Ms. Melanie Jones to please join me here at the podium. Did you notice the thrust by which she came forward? I was driving by the CrossFit place on Route 1 one time, and I saw where she gained that strength and power. She was not nearly as cleaned up as she is tonight. I saw that. But Melanie assumed her duties as principal of Cranes Creek Middle School on July 1 after your approval last month. She formerly served as assistant principal at Union Pines High School and Southern Middle School. Ms. Jones has been with Moore County Schools since 1999 when she began as an English teacher at Pinecrest High School. Melanie's greatest strengths are her leadership skills and her initiative, particularly in the areas of professional development and the establishment of instructional strategies to ensure the support, evaluation, development, and retention of high-performing teachers and students. She is more than capable and very committed to increasing student achievement and creating a positive school culture at Cranes Creek Middle School. She holds an administrative license from UNC Pembroke and a Master of Arts in Education and a Bachelor of Arts in English with a minor in coaching from Western Kentucky University. She's also here tonight with Jaden, who's going to be going into 6th grade at Southern Middle School, and Madison going into 11th grade at Pinecrest High School. And I'd like them to stand, and I'd like everyone else to join me in congratulating and welcoming their mom as our new principal at Cranes Creek.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, members of the board, that completes my monthly report. I remain at your service.
Thank you, Dr. Grimacy. Next item on the agenda is the guiding principles for the Area 1 Elementary School attendance area. Oh, public address. I am moving too fast. Next item on the agenda is the public address.
Madam Chairman, there's no one signed up for public address tonight.
You just wanted to say that, didn't you? Thank you, Ms. Carter.
You're welcome.
Now, the next item on the agenda is the guiding principles for the Area 1 Elementary School attendance area. Mr. Brath.
Thank you, and this is just following up with where you left off in the work session with the discussions about the guiding principles. You've had the time to consider them since it was presented to now, and mull them over in your head. Of course, we have Mike Miller and Laura Evans here with us still. If you have any more specific questions you want to ask about it, otherwise staff is ready to make a recommendation that the board adopt these as the guiding principles for the attendance area development of Area 1 Elementary School.
But specifically, we would ask the board to consider a motion to approve the recommended guiding principles for the development of the school attendance area.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Are there any questions or comments?
I don't know. I think it's incredibly well thought out. Appreciate having the guidance of how to make this happen. And I don't envy you as you sit down counting numbers and finally walking us through to the final numbers.
I think from my perspective, I said this earlier too during our work session, that I appreciated having sort of the overarching principles above this, that there's not one that's higher than another, that there's no priorities within these, that these are just the principles that will help us guide some of the decisions. And I thought that having that discussion during the work session was extremely beneficial and helpful, so thank you. All right, is there a motion on the table to accept these?
Madam Chair, I move that we accept the guiding principles presented for the board to consider for the new school.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, on item 8B, I'll defer to you and to legal counsel.
Me? You? I'll do it.
Madam Chair, I'll go ahead and introduce it if you'd like.
Sounds good.
Before the board is a simple contract amendment. As you see, it's a one-page contract amendment. The only impact of the amendment is to extend Dr. Grimacy's employment by 1 year. That's the maximum allowed under North Carolina law.
Is there a motion on the table to accept?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion or comments?
I can start.
If you would like.
I was just going to say, we appreciate everything that you do. You raise the bar for Moore County schools, and that is very satisfying, and this is why I wanted to become a board member, is to work next to you. So thank you for that.
Eventually, you got the seat here.
And I got the seat next to you.
Charles,
I
let you
try to
have
live
it.
up to
Yeah,
Charles's,
that's right.
but it's hard.
It's hard.
Are there any other comments?
Yes.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I just appreciate having been a new board member, but having looked for the last number of years from afar, the openness and transparency that we have here. And I credit you for being the leader in that, Dr. Bob. It makes life so much easier for our parents and our students and our teachers.
Thank you, sir. I'm looking forward to the next 4 years. It's been a pleasure.
It's just keep up the good work.
Agreed. We've had a busy year. There'll be a busy one next year and 3 years after that.
And the year after, and the year after.
And the year after that, so.
Yeah, respond to all this love.
No.
Because there may not be another moment like this anytime soon.
Building schools, there's no telling.
Yeah, we're building schools.
We have 13,000 remarkable children. And it's you know, I have a job that enables me to visit, 46 classrooms every 8 weeks or so, and be part of some outstanding work being done by colleagues of mine, teachers in these classrooms who are guided by 23 outstanding principals. And it's just my privilege to be counted among them and among our support staff and the team here at the district level. At my age, every year is just one more opportunity to just see what I can do for another year, and everybody has my commitment to continue to serve as best I can at the bottom point of this upside-down pyramid that we have, this inverted pyramid of an organization where everybody serves those above them. And so thank you very much for the opportunity to continue to serve. I'll go home tonight and tell Mrs. Grimacy that you've offered to extend the contract, find out her permission, and then I'll let you know in the morning if I can sign this, if I have permission to sign this thing.
All right,
Our pleasure.
there is a motion and a second on the table. I'm going to call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. All right, another year, wonderful. All right, board member comments. Any comments?
I'm excited for the new year to begin. I can't believe it's already almost August.
No comments.
If we keep our comments short, we can get out early.
Oh, is that it?
This is probably a record-setting meeting.
Ms. Caldwell?
I got nothing.
Well, unfortunately, I do. I'm so sorry. I'll be quick, though. As you noted, it is the beginning of our school year, so today is an important day for us because or at least our first board meeting of the new school year, and I didn't want to let the moment pass without saying a few things. As it marks the beginning of the new school year for our schools, and it's the start of our new strategic plan. For those of you that were with us last month, we approved the new strategic plan, and that took a lot of effort on the part of senior staff, advisory committees, and us, and Dr. Grimacy over the past 6 months. So before we jump into the year, I'd like to reflect on the tremendous accomplishments from last year that each of you sitting here beside you, me, including you, Dr. Grimacy, and the staff in front of me, all of you have put in tremendous effort and work. Our workforce is more satisfied than before. We have increased academic outcomes for our students in schools. We've begin implementing our facilities plan by building schools for the future and are working towards critical improvements in our older schools. And we have chipped away at our reliance on fund balance to the point where we can implement a zero-sum budget, which makes, I know it's difficult, but we're very excited about that moving forward. Along the way, we've connected with parents and the community at large in a way that we have never done before, and there is engagement and enormous pride in our public schools here and the education our students in our community receive. And for that effort last year, I just want to make sure that we all take a moment to reflect on that and let that sink in. And none of that came easily. It all came with significant input of talent, time, and energy from many, many people in the room, as well as parents, the community, and our county commissioners. So I thank each and every one of you for all of your efforts. And while we accomplished much, I hate to say this, but there's more to do. Among others, we need to continue to look at security and safety concerns in all of our schools. We need to continue to direct targeted resources to behavioral health of our students and provide intervention and support for students in crisis. What we did today by approving that memorandum of understanding is a great step in that direction, so I'm very excited for that. We need to continue our efforts to support our diverse student body, and that includes a focus on academics, activities, and staff in thinking about diversity. We need to be vigilant during legislative sessions and advocate for our students and teachers and for the future of public education, not only in Moore County, but all around the state. We need to continue to advance our students' access to technology and tools to advance that learning. We talked about that today, too, that we still have deficits in that area and making sure that our youngest students have the resources and tools they need. And in that vein, where is Mr. Eklund? Is he here? Is he left? Oh, he's going to love this one. We need to continue to ensure that our technology infrastructure is stable to support the close to 14,500 students and staff who work on it daily. So that has to be something we consider. Thankfully, our new strategic plan will give us a roadmap to help meet those needs and more. We have the plan, and I believe we have the staff that is second to none, and a school board that is committed to providing educational opportunities for all students and an inspiring workplace for all staff. The success of our plan means success of all of Moore County. So I'm ready. Are all of you? Let's roll up our sleeves. Let's go. That's all I have.
Madam Chair, move the meeting be adjourned.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you for indulging.
Great job.
Very well done. Nice to see you.
Yeah, great.
Okay.
Just start here.
Perfect.